Before we left, Supervisor Egan had his light on to talk, and there was one other, and when I cleared the board off for those kids, somebody else's was there. I thought,
I would like mine here.
you want to,
Mine is coming.
okay. You were on there?
Vegan, myself, and Sal. Oh, I wanted to speak to it.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few questions here. We all know that was a mistake, what happened, not the lease being signed for whosever reason or purpose it was, but is that lease signed now? Can someone tell me?
Is this on? Okay. No, not yet. Probably within the next few months.
2 months? I think that's a little too long.
You can do it from a lot of the time you, oh, yeah.
To a certain extent, we're at the mercy of Oshkosh Corp.
I've got a few more questions, Mr. Chairman. The other question is, all the hangars out there, have all been contracts been signed? Some of them have not sold them,
No, they're all signed.
for sure.
Yes.
My third thing is, what's being done with the property out there? Are we renting this out to farmers, or are we paying some of our own help to go ahead and mow the lawn and runways, everything out there?
Which, are you referring to the newly acquired land?
Maybe the fields and that, there was always used to be crops and that out there that was possibly wasn't being done out there.
Anything that's available that's outside of the air operations area that we can rent is rented to farmers. Yes.
Okay, and my last, which is not a question, other than hopefully you and the chairman can get together and possibly bring the film in of this advertising that's supposedly going on, and possibly show us not the grades that we're talking about terminal or something, but I'd like to see that advertising that's going to see them around here. Thank you.
Did you hear him?
No, I didn't hear that.
Okay, got us.
I don't know, my last thing was if possibly if you and the chairman could get together and bring in the tape of the advertising that we've been heard so much about.
From the aviators,
Oh, the
right?
aviators TV.
From the
Okay.
aviator, correct. Not when we're talking about the terminal or something to interfere with that. I would just like to see, and I think some of the other ones, because we hear all this money being spent, but I don't think anybody around here has seen the ad itself. So if you and the chairman could get together sometime to show us that, I'd appreciate that.
Well, it's every episode that our name is and logo is on. So what we can do is I can try and get copies of season 1, 2, or 3 and hand it to every supervisor, and they can take it home and watch it. That'd be the easiest.
Well, either way, or you could show us
Unless you
here.
wanna
I
watch-
guess that's what I'm
If
asking.
you want to watch videos here, that's fine.
Well-
I'm up for it.
That's fine too. We've been asked, we're spending a lot of money here, and you come and ask for a lot of money, and I think it's time that maybe we get something back for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question will relate to page 302 of the budget. As you might recall, I believe it was last year, we approved the purchase of a large, I believe it was a New Holland tractor, was it?
Correct,
For the
yes.
airport? Now, in this budget, you have capital outlay for a tractor with finish mower. I assume that you don't want to use the big mower, the big tractor for mowing?
No, we are.
Okay.
We are still continuing to use that one. We're replacing the oldest one in the fleet now. That one is about 20 years old also.
Okay, I assume that the new big one would have done that.
No,
So
no,
now
this-
you want a smaller one?
Correct.
Can you elaborate on that a little more?
I don't have the specifics in front of me, but we're looking at something on a similar size, maybe a little bit smaller, that can pull a mower, finish mower behind, rather than have a flail mower on the sides, like our larger one that we just purchased. For a finish mower, it's going to give us a better surface for areas where EA parks aircraft. And it cuts a wider area too.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Moll, we have spent a lot of money in advertising, and advertising, you want to see results. How many new inquiries, since you've been doing this advertising, serious inquiries for utilizing the airport for businesses?
Okay. Well, since we advertised, we've gotten 2 new businesses already, Brooks Aviation and DeShannon Aviation. And we are in serious discussions with another 4 companies probably for the south end of the airport at the new business park.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wingate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter, we built a fence around the airport supposedly for security, keep animals out. You mentioned, I think, a couple of meetings ago that you happened to look out your window and you saw a dog running or some animal. Mm-hmm. My question relates to the land that we bought that's adjacent to the airport. What is planted on that land? What crop?
I don't know.
Would it be corn?
It could possibly be, I'm not sure.
Well, wouldn't corn attract birds, which would be a major hazard?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Well,
Any crop on the airport is a hazard.
don't we have control about that?
Yes.
So what are we going to do about that?
We, at the committee level, I brought up the notion that we just discontinue all farming on the airport, and apparently the committee wants to continue farming to bring in more revenue. Frankly, I'd rather not.
Well, like for instance, if you planted soybeans, would that be less of an attraction to birds than corn?
Well, corn's probably going to be more deer attractant, and probably geese, but soybeans is going to attract birds, yes.
Okay.
Alfalfa's going to attract birds.
Supervisor Rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After my initial opening remarks, a number of other supervisors were asking questions, and I wrote a note down. I just want to make sure that I wrote it correct. I believe that the county executive said that you were not aware at last year's budget session that the truck rate rental was going to be reduced. I would like to refer you all to my opening remarks, wherein I said at 1:59 p.m. that afternoon, this was October 29th last year, this comment was made, and I quote, "The vehicle renters are on a per vehicle per day basis, or they have been in the past," unquote. That was by you. 1:59 the afternoon of the 29th. I do have a few questions, if I may, Peter.
Sure.
On page 291, item 3, under accomplishments, Explorer Solutions of Canada. Who is this?
This is a company that the city of Oshkosh has contracted with to identify potential businesses and companies that could be used to fill the industrial park, aviation business park, rather.
Okay, so this is not Jennifer's company?
No, that's
Okay.
Next Gen Studios.
Okay. Going to number 11 on that same page, 291, contracted with Next Gen Studios for expanded airport marketing and promotion work. That is
Correct.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Am I correct that Jennifer is also a tenant that pays the county $25,000 a year?
Correct.
So she's a tenant that
Yes.
pays us $25,000 a year, and then we turn around and hire her to be a consultant with respect to promotions.
Well,
You
wait a
see any conflict there?
I checked with the county corporation counsel, and he saw no problem with that. Now, we don't pay her $25,000. That goes to 4 Points Marketing up in Canada, which does the Aviators TV. She doesn't get that money. She's only the executive producer of the show.
Oh, okay. That's why I was confused on the first
Okay.
one when said Explorer Solutions of Canada. That's why I thought they were related. And the last question I have on objectives is for 2015, item 11, says investigate new hangar developments with quote-unquote outside partners. I don't know what that means.
What that
outside
means,
partners.
There are companies that have approached us about building hangars. They would assume the leasing responsibilities. They would do is pay us the ground lease, and they'd be responsible for filling the hangars themselves and doing the management of it.
Okay. I'll then jump to page 295, and somebody touched on this. At the top, it says 2014 adopted budget, and then, 2014 adopted budget, and next to that it says 2014 adjusted budget. I don't care which one of you gentlemen answer this. When, why, and how does this adjustment take place?
If the board passes a resolution changing a budget during the year, that the first column is the budget in the last budget book, and then the next column reflects changes that were made by the board during the course of the year.
Thank you. On the next page, 296, I'm asking this because I really don't know. It says rental revenues, line item 45011, land rental airport 45059, and building rental airport 45060. Can you briefly, Peter, explain,
Sure.
at least to me, what each of those are?
Right. Rental revenues are those revenues primarily in the airport terminal. From Hertz, Greyhound, Next Gen Studios, any other tenants that may be within one of our buildings. The land rental would be people who own private hangars who are leasing the land underneath it. The corporation vehicles that are parked on the airport. Hilton Hotels, for that matter, is also under land lease because they own the building but lease the land from us. And building rental would be the hangars that we own.
Okay, thank you. That brings another point that I did want to make. On line item 45059, if you look over to the budget, it's 470,000. Don't be confused, as I have been over the last 2 or 3 years, that that's the rental to Oshkosh Truck. It includes a whole lot of other things. And the numbers that Peter supplied me is that the rental for storage for 2015 is actually $74,000. So the truck rental is obviously way, way down. Just wanted to point that out. Supervisor Haig on page 299 had talked to you briefly about maintenance buildings, line item 54020, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you indicated that you were going to do some work on existing hangars and maybe some electrical work and so forth?
Correct.
My question is, if you can go down to the next page, it says building repairs, line item 55008, 41,500, which is a pretty good increase. Could you differentiate what that is from the previous item?
Okay.
55,008.
Okay, those 55008 is contractual. It's service work that an outside company would do, whereas the 54020, yes, that would be us doing the work, or perhaps the facilities or property management department would be doing that work.
Can you
It's
give me an example, just one example of what 55008 would be? A contractual,
If we'll probably hire a painter like to repaint the hangars on the outside. We won't do that ourselves.
okay. Thank you, I have no further questions.
Okay, we'll go on to highway, page 306. or 304, it's the starting with the mission statement.
The chart of staffing shows an increase of 2 full-time from 78 to 80, and it continues at 2 part-time for a total of 82, 2 employees higher than the prior year. Also on page 308 is a summary of significant changes. And remember, this area is largely service performed on the state highways that's reimbursed by the state. Ernie Winters in the back and can answer specific questions.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to previous comments made, I certainly applaud the Highway Committee Director, Highway Department Director for his support, transparency, whatever you want to call it. I certainly have enjoyed working with Ernie, and the committee meetings, Highway Department committee meetings are spot on, very factual, and if you ever call Ernie with a question, he always answers in a very timely fashion, so I certainly appreciate that. My question is in regards to, and I just asked you this, but I want you to say it in front of the full board. We had a pretty rough winter the last couple of years with snow removal, and it looks like we've increased that in your budget here again. Do you feel it's, for the time being, I mean, you don't have a crystal ball, but do you think it's sufficient for the time being?
Afternoon, everybody. We did raise our winter maintenance budget for the county road system. We did have a tough winter last year, and we had, I believe, the last 3 budgets, we had to come to finance a county board to get additional funding to cover costs. We did raise it enough. We do think we have enough. Plus, we're hearing that the vortex isn't supposed to be quite as bad this year, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Thank you. Good luck.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Ernie, I have 2 questions for you. On page 318, are all of these items in the capital outlay, are they all to replace existing vehicles or equipment?
Yes, they're all to replace existing trucks and pieces of equipment.
Okay. What would you say is the average age of what you're replacing?
It depends. The average small truck age is probably 6 to 8 years. The average larger truck is probably 11, 12, 13 years. It can be the amount of hours and how tough they were used as well as the age.
And then my second question is, the 2 people that you're adding on, what is the reasoning behind that?
Not to get into a long explanation, but the state, the DOT, drastically changed and is in the process of changing how we work for them this year. And those changes have brought upon additional funding that's available for counties to do state maintenance. We're getting a lot more what's called routine maintenance money, and we also got some performance-based maintenance, which is their process for bidding county work. We picked up almost $300,000 worth of that work in 2014, and we're expecting more of that in 15. We added about 60 lane miles on US Highway 41, and we can pay for these people largely with state dollars, and we simply need more people to keep up.
Okay, thank you.
There also is a summary of significant changes for county road maintenance.
Supervisor Schneider.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arnie, I see in your goals and objectives for 2015, number 1 is to construct and implement a magnesium chloride dispenser system. Is that reflected in any line item, and should it be successful, would it have a drastic impact on sodium calcium chloride, or what do you expect the impact would be?
The mag chloride is primarily for very cold temperatures. I don't know how many of you drove on 41 last year when it was 10 below, but we had some trouble getting the ice to melt. Most counties did with a lot of concrete roadway. The mag chloride tank is for those times when we're having trouble. We don't have a lot of radiant heat, the concrete doesn't absorb it. We had trouble getting the ice to move off of 41 and some of the other state roads. The mag chloride tank and process is not a huge investment of dollars. I think we're looking at about $15,000 or $20,000 for that. And a lot of that, if not all of it, is state reimbursed. Half of that is state reimbursed.
Talking to your microphone.
Would it then have a big impact on sodium and calcium?
Its use is limited. It's an additive to salt. It's not used all by itself, so you spray it as a liquid onto your salt load. And it does help the salt work at colder temperatures, so it could in theory reduce some of our salt use, but it would be minor.
Thank you.
Didn't some of those chemicals was controversial last year? It created the ice to come or something? I don't remember what it was. There were people that called me and said that they were following our trucks and they were spinning,
There are some counties that have tried different vegetable derivatives, like beet juice is one example. They found out that if you don't apply that in the proper, setting and at the right amount, it does make it very, very slippery. We had instances last year where it was so cold, we would salt, and 15 minutes later the ice was forming again. We just could not stay on top of it.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was basically the same as Mr. Snyder's, except where is that reflected in the budget?
The mag chloride.
The
mag chloride?
Yeah.
That system
Is that a budgeted item?
That was done as a budget transfer in 2000. That was done as a budget transfer in 2014.
Okay.
And half of that, because part of that is coming from the state, there would be an offsetting revenue then.
Okay.
County road maintenance.
The county road maintenance
320.
significant changes are on page 319. The difference between the highway and the county road maintenance is work done for the benefit of the county, paid for by the county, so it's on the levy.
Public health.
Thank you.
Public health starts on page 324. Doug Gearin is in the back to answer any questions. The Public Health Department is going to have 33 full-time employees and 9 part-time employees for a total of 42, which is the same total as last year, but we shifted to have 1 less full-time and 1 more part-time. The summary of significant changes is on page 330 and 331.
I have a question. So now that we're all one happy family with a lot of different cities and villages and everybody involved, how does the money work out? Or how does that?
Well, currently we're operating, at a budget that was anticipated as a part of the consolidation. So, we're about 20% down overall on staffing from what would have been 3 fully staffed departments, and we're saving in the neighborhood of roughly, 200,000 plus each year on those services.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nguyen, could you explain to us, and this would be an item of operating expense. It's object number 53520, food expense incurred by public health for $4,120. How is that operating expense, what is that for?
So the food expenses that we incur are primarily related to working with volunteers in community events. So much of the work that we're doing in population health, particularly with our Rethink Community Coalition, relies very heavily on pulling in volunteers from the community, from other organizations, and it's simply a very effective way to help insurance tenants at meetings, to conduct meetings during time periods that are oftentimes available, such as early in the morning or over lunch, and like I said, as an incentive to have some participation that pays off greatly in the efforts of all those volunteers.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Skellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the significant changes, I was just curious, the change in nursing services based on decrease of immunization decline, as well as the medical supply counterpart to that. Is that is that a need issue or a participation issue, or what's the catalyst for that change?
Yeah, in the past year and a half or so, the CDC passed as a result of the Affordable Care Act, is now requiring that anyone that has insurance be not given vaccine that's supplied by the CDC or the state. And so that has reduced the number of clients that we have that we see and administer vaccines to by quite a bit, and that reflects the reduced cost of supplies to supply those vaccines.
Supervisor Olson.
I'm a little concerned about how every department, almost every department, has outside contractual services, and when you add it all up, it's got to be a significant amount of money. Here on 55030, you have $225,000. Could you explain what that's for, please?
Sure. The contractual services is usually related to, in this case, I'm pretty sure it's all related to, or at least primarily related to, fiscal agent duties. So we act as a fiscal agent for the Wisconsin Hospital Preparedness Program and for the Regional Trauma Advisory Council. Those two contracts alone are over $160,000. That money is all essentially passed through. We receive the contract, and then we reimburse the expenses that are incurred by those two entities. And so really the remainder of that is reflective, a little bit more reflective of what the department is actually spending. That remainder is often a part of grants that we have and us hiring contractors to help us fulfill some of those obligations in those grants.
Follow-up question. Are you able to obtain a lot of grants?
We try.
Of course, but
Yeah. So, we over roughly 55% of our budget or so is contracts, grants, and fees that we have, and that does change from year to year. Funding from some of the more routine sources, such as the state, which is a lot of federal pass-through money, has declined. We have been able to pick up some grants in the past few years that have helped us a lot. Just got refunded for a drug-free communities program. That's a $625,000 grant over 5 years. A couple years ago, we received a $450,000 grant.
Okay. Thank you. One other question. I see in 2014 we paid $14,000 for interpreter, and this year it's $3,000. Can you explain that what the interpreter is? I mean, obviously interpreter interprets language, but what language is he interpreting? And why did it go down to 3?
Yep. Over the past couple of years, we've seen an increase in refugees coming to this area. And initially, our contracts with the state for refugee health screening included in-person visits, which often required interpretation. That contract has been restructured such that most of the in-person visits are now being conducted at a medical clinic or a clinic site. Most of our interaction with that client is over the phone, where an interpreter may be available. Also, we were able to hire on a temporary basis interpreters for use that was able to substantially cut that cost.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Furry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the intent here when we did this merger was to create savings. Am I correct? Was not the understanding? Well, when I look on page, what is it, 337? And I look at expenses total, I don't see the savings, so somebody help me out.
Well, I think the savings are being measured from what would be the cost of the 3 different health departments combined versus the cost of the consolidated health department. So those original costs were reflected in the city budgets as well as the county budget. So you'd have to add the total of Oshkosh, Neenah, and the county's budget and compare that against the consolidated budget. And remember, of course, that the additional areas provided through the county also add a base for those services to be billed. The health department is only billed against those portions of the county that use the health services. It's not countywide. So it used to be only billed against mostly townships. But now the cost of the health department is spread over the townships, the city of Oshkosh, and the city of Neenah. And I think if you look at the component of the tax bills, that's the health department, it's down from where it would have been in the past. And in fact, remember, we also have that old surplus being rebated in quarters to the old service area.
So we're gonna, I read in there we're getting what, 225 or something?
Yeah,
Rebated.
but to see what the savings is, you have to look at what the total costs were for Oshkosh, Neenah, and the county, and compare that to what the county is incurring now on that joint health department.
I don't see the savings on my page, so I gotta look in the Oshkosh book to see their savings?
Well, that's right. You'd have to take the combination of all 3 to see what the change is.
Oh. Okay.
But again, it's important to note the cost of the health department is now spread over a much larger base. So probably the better place to find it is in the back of the book when it gives the breakdown of the taxes by community. If you look to see what the health department charges are for a specific community and then compare that to a pre-consolidation health department charge.
Okay. When we get to that point, could you point it out? I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Although we usually don't actually,
We aren't gonna go that far?
we usually don't go that far in the budget book, but I can point it out to you separately.
Thank you.
Supervisor Skellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the executive. On page 333, item 42007, revenue from Wisconsin Health Services. The executive budget has a decrease of about $150,000 from the request. Could you speak to what that decrease is about?
Now, that happened during the meeting, and Doug, can you refresh my memory on?
Absolutely. So in planning for the budget for next year, we had a placeholder there for what may have been additional revenues coming in, and we did not, at this time, we don't expect those revenues.
Where are those, what are those revenues?
So any revenues from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services are typically contracts, and those contracts range from public health preparedness funding, maternal child health, funds for radon. There's a few others.
So what of those are in that 150,000 that was taken out?
All of those are in there. And I have
Doug, do you remember what amounts you expected when you constructed the budget, that by the time we had our meeting together, you knew it wasn't going to come in? Do you remember what that item was?
Yeah, so that was basically a placeholder in the budget until our meeting. And at that time, we confirmed that we would not have that revenue. What is included for Wisconsin Health Services is maternal child health funding, lead funding for doing lead testing and lead investigations, our immunization, some funding to help us with immunizations, a contract for HIV, partner referral. That's a multi-county contract. As I mentioned, our public health preparedness, our Wisconsin Hospital Emergency Preparedness Program. That's a line item in that as well. Our Well Woman funding, the Well Woman program, our refugee grant funding, our prevention grant funding, and then that Fox Valley Regional Trauma Advisory Council, that RTAC funding that I mentioned before.
Do you remember, though, what it was that you anticipated we might get when you prepared the initial request?
Well, yeah, we did have some grant applications pending. We had a very large one pending, and we've learned that we are not receiving any funds at this time. We may have some opportunities for some funding in the next year or so that we may have access to. And that's mostly related to obesity prevention, nutrition, physical activity type of activities.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you. Doug, on page 330, does the increase in building rental mean that we will stay at the facility that we use for the NENA branch, or the NENA office for the health department?
Yeah, that was we had an error in our previous budget. We did not put in the right amount. We were short on what our actual costs are, and so that's the reason for the adjustment. And to address the second part of that question, our lease is up the middle of 2015 with the city of Neenah for use of City Hall space, and we are exploring options of consolidating the two northern offices. Currently, we occupy space in the Neenah Human Services Building and in Neenah City Hall, where we offer services. We'd really like to combine those like we have in Oshkosh, where we pulled in the WIC clinic out of the Oshkosh Human Services Building when we moved into the County Administration Building.
And when do we have to make a decision whether or not we renew that lease by June, or?
I would have to look at the terms on that. I don't believe that there's a significant advance notice required, although we'll be in discussion with that over the coming months. So we need to have those plans made far enough in advance that we can make any adjustments to facilities that we might need to accommodate staff at a single location.
We've also committed, as part of the consolidation, to keeping that department in the Neenah-Menasha area for a prolonged period of time. So even if we moved out of Neenah City Hall, it would probably have to be somewhere else in that area, like the Human Service Building, for instance.
Yeah, and we already offer services up there, so it's just a natural for us to combine those. But the county executive's correct. I think in our consolidation agreement, we have a 10-year clause that the public health services outside of WIC will remain in the northern end of the county.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is a chronic disease prevention supervisor? And what might that individual do?
So chronic disease prevention is an important public health intervention. Much of our healthcare costs are as a result of mismanagement or non-management of chronic diseases like asthma, diabetes, heart disease, and so those costs are tremendous by waiting until they happen in order to treat them. The intent of chronic disease prevention is to address those issues before they develop, or to at least ensure that they're adequately treated when they occur, and that they don't, be allowed to exist so long that they create other health problems and result in very significant healthcare bills. So we use primarily health educators for that type of work, and so some of the grant funding that we've received is in nutrition, physical activity, obesity prevention, and that position supervises the staff. Now that position is not currently filled. We've actually held it open. Because pending the outcome of budget, just because we've had some funding shifts over this past year, but essentially is managing health education staff that are working with the community to increase awareness and increase health by helping prevent some of those chronic diseases from occurring in the first place.
So what would necessarily be like a tangible goal of hiring such a person? What could we expect to see as a result? A decrease in anything? Really?
Certainly our goal would be to reduce the incidence of chronic diseases, and you can pick any one you want and set a target over a period of time, and that could be simply reflected as a decrease in obesity, or a decrease in the number of people that are overweight, or a decrease in the number of persons newly diagnosed with diabetes, or a lower average blood sugar level. So there's a number of parameters that we can use. Most of our work in that area is funded through contracts or grants that have built-in targets for them already, or include a significant evaluation component so that we can compare the effectiveness of our strategies pre and post.
Will this person be working in conjunction with, say, Extension? I know that they have educators who talk about preparing food and et cetera, et cetera. Do they work it, or is this kind of just it seems a little redundant to me that there are already positions like this out there. That's why I asked.
Yeah, the health education staff that this person would manage are very active with our community coalition and our partners. And so our goal there is to leverage the community and leverage the partners that exist in our community so that we're working on similar items, that we can leverage our efforts and hopefully reach goals sooner by cooperating with other entities of similar interest.
And the last question is in regards to the offset of the fund balance on page 332, and I think maybe this is where we're not seeing that savings that Mr. Faria is looking for at the end of the day. It looks like we're decreasing the amount of fund balance used here to offset the levy. Last year it was $415,000. This year's $290,000.
Well, the 290 this year, that's actually returning the surplus back to the municipalities from prior to the consolidation. Because there was a fund balance there prior to the consolidation, and that had to be returned to the municipalities that were part of the health department levy.
So
and it's only right that they are the ones that get that back. So that's what that is. Last year, it was 290 plus 100 and what, 25?
Yep.
Because there was 125,000 of a grant that we didn't get, and we applied fund balance instead.
And then this year we got that grant, so that was just a one-time gap coverage for a large grant.
We'll see what happens.
And it seems to me that why that was spread over 4 years has to do with the impact of basically reducing the levy costs with that reserve, what it would have on future budgets. So rather than doing it all at once, which would have effectively lowered the amount that we were able to levy, we did it, I believe, in 4 stages.
Sure, and I do recall that. I just didn't see that spelled out in the narrative necessarily, so thank you for your help on that, gentlemen.
You're off the hot seat. Veteran Services.
Thank you.
That's on page 348 that it starts. Bob Stone's in the back of the room to answer any questions. The Veteran Service Office has 4 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees, for a total of 6, the same as last year. And the summary of significant changes is on page 353.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stone, can you share with the board how the $300,000 plus of levied expense for veteran services is leveraged to provide resources to Winnebago County citizens, and how that is an economic generator?
Actually, I think our levy is close to $380,000. We get a $13,000 grant for enhancement of services from the State of Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. That's listed as a revenue at the top of the budget. What does that actually mean to Winnebago County? It's not like that money goes into a dark hole someplace. The county receives, the members of the county, veterans in the county receive veterans benefits in the form of health care, compensation pension, education benefits, insurance. And the last figure that I ran on that, we had in excess of $51,725,000. It's about $100 to one. Pretty significant impact.
Thank you.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply want to thank you for your service, sir. I have a friend that's been in need, and I'm told that you have done an outstanding job of meeting this person's needs. So, not a budget issue, just take advantage of the opportunity to thank you for your service to this county.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you. I would just like to add my sentiments to Mr. Fari's. I did get an email a few days ago. I talked to Robert before the meeting, personally thanked him for his service, told him that in 45 years in business, if I had had him as an employee, I would have been extremely happy. I've never known anyone with more enthusiasm than Robert Stone, and on behalf of myself and I'm sure the rest of the board, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I'd like to take advantage of the opportunity. I may never have this opportunity again, but on a personal note, county exec, county board chair, committees, it's been wonderful. I still think of myself as being on the honeymoon, so it's been great. Thank you.
Supervisor Smith.
Again, I'd like to thank you for your service, Mr. Stone. Have a happy retirement.
Thank you. Other questions?
Human Services.
The human service budget starts on page 358. The chart of personnel is on page 371. The department's budgeted to have 250 full-time employees and 24 part-time employees for a total of 274. That's a significant increase from the prior year of 4 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. Dr. Bill Topol's in the back of the room to answer any questions that you have.
Explain the $1 million we're getting back and how we're getting it back and where it's going. And I wanted him to explain the money we're getting back from, I don't know, I talked to you different times about it, the one that Mr. Harris put in years ago.
For this,
and now they're giving it back to us from the state. They combined some
the
things.
reduction in our cost for family care, which I think was $500,000 for 2015, is that right?
Sure. Over the last about 4 years, we've been receiving a reduction in the amount of money that we're spending on our family care. It's still a requirement that we continue to pay approximately $1.5 million a year to the Lakeland, or to the state, which then in turn contracts with Lakeland Care District to serve our elderly, physically disabled, and developmentally disabled adults in the community. And we started that venture back in 2010, and we're coming to the end of the reductions that we're getting. So for 2015, instead of getting approximately $900,000 back, we're going to be in the area of about 450 to 480 in 2015, and then in years beyond that, we won't be getting any significant reductions any longer in the family care dollars that we're spending. But for 2015, we're still getting about $500,000 that's reflected in the budget, and why that doesn't come directly back to the county is because there is a requirement that all the savings generated from the divestment, so to speak, to family care has to be reinvested back into our service array and human services. So what we try to do each and every budget is to try to figure out the best way to look at the services we provide across the board and to make changes that will actually increase service utilization, or will decrease our large funding items, or will produce better services for our citizens. So it doesn't come back to the county board directly, although I can tell you in the last, I believe, 3 years, our return to the county board at the end of our budget years have been right around the right around the $1 million mark. So we have been able to, even with making the changes that we've made and the reinvestments that we've made, we've been able to come in under budget in the last 3 years and provide the county with some extra funding. And we are likely to do that again this year.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Topple, I'm making reference to page 378. Under this category of operating expenses, under object number 53520, is a food expense, which appears to be pretty consistent over the last 5 years. Could you share with us what is the expense for food of $28,200, of which $28,000 is attributed to the behavioral division?
Sure. We run two 24/7, 365-day-a-year residential programs in the city of Oshkosh. One of them is named Summit House. The other is Towards Tomorrow. They're both staffed round the clock. They have residents numbering from 8 to 12 at any one time. And with that, because we are running two full-time residential centers, we have to provide, obviously they're staying there. We are providing lodging, we're providing food, and we're providing staffing for those residents. So the food budget you see there, Mr. Eisen, reflects the weekly food charges for making sure that those citizens are fed correctly.
It's for the residential facilities that...
They're residential facilities for the chronically mentally ill adult population in the city.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, in the county. I apologize. The location is the city. I meant that. Location is the city, but it's for any county resident that needs that. I thank you for correcting me.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you. Bill, do we, in any shape or form, help fund or facilitate the medical and health needs of clients in this county based on they qualify because of economic reasons? Do we do that at all?
Yes, we fund two community health clinics, one up in the Menasha area. I believe it's Partnership Health Center, and we also in part fund the Healthy Living Clinic in Oshkosh. So we are providing a portion of some of the physical health care of citizens in both the north end and the south end of the county.
You kind of answered my question. Here's my thought, and I talked to Mr. Collier if we're having this walk-in clinic, I said, and Mr. Collar's not too keen on the deal because he said they tried Sheboygan, but if not only could they have employees, but also people are being served through Medicare and Medicaid, and that's what my ideal was. And Mr. Collar said they explored it, and I was just curious if there's any way we help directly with individuals with their health and medical care, and maybe that's a way we could have people go to this walking clinic. That's why I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the discussions that you had with Mr. Collard about the other health walking clinics. So if he's here, if you wanted to ask him about that. But I can't speak to whether or not we could combine our clients' health needs with our employees' health needs. I think those are two really distinct groups, but I would lend my time to Mr. Collard if he chose to answer that more fully for you, Mr. Norton.
Okay, thank you.
Go back to work.
That was too few questions for the largest budget.
Yeah.
That was,
The next section then is the Parkview Health Center. It starts 415. Morgan Hinckley's in the back of the room to answer any questions you might have. The chart of employees reflects 215 full-time employees and 10 part-time employees. Employees in Parkview are counted a little different than other parts of the budget, and that has historically been the case. So we count them in the same fashion that they were counted prior to my arrival as county executive. And that counting's a little closer to an FTE count, but not a pure FTE count. But it's been consistent over time, and this is the same level of employment as in 2014. The summary of significant changes starts on page 421. And once again, Morgan is in the back of the room.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for you, Mr. Harris. Their levy actually went down, is being reduced. And it says that we're applying $1.1 million of reserves. Now, of the departments in this county, that appears to be the largest application, which kind of exemplifies it.
Yeah,
Can you explain that?
Yeah,
They're getting way up there and way too high?
Yeah, last year we applied $750,000 to reserves, and the reserves actually grew at the end of that budget period. So we're applying a larger amount based on how much has been returning to reserves, but we need to actually gain a better handle on budgeting the expenses for that department, because it reflects two things. It does reflect a good management of those expenses, but it also probably reflects a little bit of over budgeting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some of their savings, though, are probably because this is an area that has lots of employees, and an area where there's also a lot of turnover. And so that rapid turnover of employees can cause your employment expenses to come in under budget, because you don't have all positions filled for the whole year, and because new employees may be making less money when they first start than the employees that turn over. So it is a very difficult area to budget.
Well, I would think that if you're over budgeting, but yet you're returning the money to basically reduce the levers substantially. It's kind of a backwards system, but at least it's working.
That's correct. It's-
However, if you weren't returning the money, that would be more of a major issue.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct. It is also an area that's subject to more uncertainty because they never know for sure what the next year's Medicaid reimbursements will bring. You know, an awful lot of the money that flows into that area is federal money passing through the state's hands, and it is subject to change. So that adds a greater degree of uncertainty to their budgeting.
I also have, and this question has come up, and we have an excellent facility. I want to state that up front, but perhaps you can tell me how many individuals are under your care that are on, is that Medicare, I believe?
Medical assistance.
Medical assistance. You know, in other words, they're not private pay. Because I'm told that private pay, you just can't afford the place. So can you respond to that comment and concern that I hear?
On average, I would say it's about 75 to 80% of our daily residency. We have occupancy for 168 beds. So approximately 120.
Well, what's the percentage of private pay versus?
The percentage of medical assistance is 75 to 80%.
Oh,
our medical assistance.
Oh, okay.
And that's worth commenting on how we're serving.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, you know, there are for-profit and not-for-profit nursing homes that serve the needs of the elderly, but there's certain categories that would not be well served without a county nursing home. So imagine a person who's living on their own on a meager pension into their 90s that never anticipated when they were working that they would live to be 90. They may exhaust all their savings and still be able to get by in a small apartment, but then their health takes a downturn and they need to go into a nursing home. They have no ability to be a private pay resident, and because the reimbursements are insufficient to cover the costs, no one in the private sector wants them as a resident. So we're filling that gap where they probably would not otherwise have a place to go. We're the place to go. And oftentimes they're in there not because of planning poorly or not savings, but because of outliving their own expectations. Another category where we serve the whole community is you get people that are in the hospital, and the hospital's done what they can for them, but they're not well enough to go back home, and they need to be placed somewhere. We take those people. Nobody else wants to take them. So oftentimes the hospital is placing people with us just for their final lifespan so they can live out that final increment with dignity. And I also need to point out virtually no new nursing homes are being built by the private sector. They're building independent living facilities, but not building nursing homes. And the reason they're doing that is if you move into an independent living facility, if your health takes a downturn, they can tell you that you're too sick to stay there. If your money is exhausted, they can tell you that if you can't pay, you have to move on. We're the place they have to go when they reach that circumstance. We also are better equipped to deal with residents that have either an elopement pattern where they don't know where they are and they try to escape. Some other nursing homes can't deal with the same level of that as we do. And also those individuals that become so ill while they're in a nursing home that their existing nursing homes can't handle them. Now, we don't take everyone that reaches those circumstances, but to the extent that we can, we do take them. So we're really focusing on the least profitable or most expensive residents that have nowhere else to go within the private sector offerings. So absent our services, I think many of these people would stay in completely inappropriate settings.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that, and that 75–80% is something I think we can be quite pleased with, really, to help the residents of the county, because I'm told it's like $6,000, is it a month? Is that what it is? Somewhere in there?
Somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you.
But that was part of county government's function from the beginning, was to
That's
take
right.
care of our sick and take care of our old that can't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the total revenue picture we see on page 423, it looks like you're anticipating about $500,000 in revenue growth this year. Is that what I'm looking at, or?
Yes, it is. We do anticipate that our Medicare and private pay occupancy will increase, mainly due to what's being seen coming from the hospitals.
I guess I only see one previous year, but have we maybe been underestimating revenues in regards to Parkview, and is that why we see what Mr. Farley identified, where we kind of have this backwards flow of money to Parkview fund balance, and then this $1.1 million to help pay down the levy? Is that kind of where it starts, or?
If I'm answering correctly or addressing your question, I think it's in part due to incremental growth in those two areas that I just mentioned, the Medicare and the private pay occupancy. But then also recall that a little better than a year ago, almost 2 years ago, we did open a new therapy addition, which has driven more people that are under those pay statuses to Parkview.
So that one of the profitable services we do is like the rehabilitation part. So when we expanded our capabilities there, that does result in some profitable operations. But it also then allows us to have rehabilitation services for those other individuals that are in our nursing home as well.
Is that, for example, what on page 424, line 45032 is, the med ad room board? Or is that something different? I see the private pay, we're expecting a growth of about 2.42% there, but so it seems like most of the growth in revenues must come from governmental sources.
The line that you're referencing is called a Medicare Advantage program. You might also hear it as a Medicare Part C program. And the trend is that more people are opting into those programs.
So I guess at the end of the day, do you think we have a little bit better picture or handle on revenues this year, so we won't be growing the fund balance as we have in the past few years as much as they've grown?
I would have to say we still have work to do in that area. That we'll see if this application of reserves to their budget is the appropriate level, because if it is the appropriate level, then the amount of new monies going into reserves will start coming down. But we probably have to watch the expenses over the long term and see where they're varying from budgeted amounts. But part of this too is we monitor all the reserves we have. We have some rough standards for each of the reserves, and their reserve is higher than our target, so it makes sense to apply more and apply less levy. But we just have to be very careful how that impacts the levy long term.
Right, and I see that we have a current, fund balance, we're anticipating 12/31/15 of $8.3 million. Is that in that target range for Parkview? I mean, you say it's a little bit above.
It's above.
Should we not be applying more of that?
No, if we apply it all at once.
Well, not all of it necessarily,
yeah, but you have the other side of the problem where if we apply a larger amount and reduce levy, that affects how much we can levy in the future. So that you have to be cautious, and effectively what we're doing is we're slicing it in thin slices to make sure we don't overdo that. And I know that's complicated, but we never know what the next year is going to bring. So we always have to be prepared for policy changes to come that will leave us short, while we're under a levy freeze, that we can't change what we receive. So I think we're applying as much as we dare without crippling the future levy, and not so much that we're allowing our spending to get out of line with our revenues.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hinckley, I'm making a reference to page 427 in our budget detail, referencing the operating expense, object number 53520, entitled food expense. There's been a wide variety of uses and amounts attributed to this expense object. Parkview has a expense amount of $388,000, which has been pretty consistent over the last 5 years. Could you share with us, with the board, what that $188,000 food expenses?
That account accounts for the 3 meals per day that we provide to all of our residents, any nutritional supplements that they may need, and also any food-related activities that go on throughout the day. So it's all food for the residents.
So that's the cost to provide 168 residents 3 meals a day for a year. That's all that it costs. Thank you.
Supervisor Rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 quick questions. Number 1, years ago, I was on the committee, and I always listened month by month what the waiting list was. Haven't heard that number in years because I haven't been on that committee. Do you still have a waiting list?
We still have a waiting list. I don't know the exact number, but if I were to put an estimate on it, it's about 20 right now.
Okay. That seems to have come down from what I remember. The only other thing I want to say is I want to congratulate you personally for maintaining the high standards and the reputation that Parkview has had for years. Thank you.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morgan, I have a question for you here. Not a budget question, but you apply to receive a music and memory grant in regard to dementia and Alzheimer's. How does that work?
It's a grant that is funded through the state of Wisconsin, and what it entails is 15 iPods for 15 individual residents at the nursing home, and we received iTunes gift cards to load those iPods with a library of music, and it's what we'd call an intervention to help with their condition, to help mitigate any side effects or discomfort that they may have related to those diagnoses.
And how does it actually, how do they do it?
For example, you may recall your first dance at a wedding or a favorite tune that comes on. You can picture yourself where you were at some point in time in your life, and it's the same concept. So you load the iPods with music that's relevant and interesting to that person, and it brings them back to a certain point in their life.
Thank you.
See, with my idea, we could all take these iPads out to Parkview with us.
Won't be long.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to echo the praise heaped on Morgan, well-deserved, but I think one of the unsung heroes in this county is Tom Geske, who's probably holding his head down. But that guy does so much way above and beyond what he needs to do. A number of years back, he assumed other jobs, got no extra pay, no plaques on his wall. We should buy him the biggest plaque available. But he deserves the thanks of every citizen of this county every member of this board, and especially all the people who have family members at Parkview, because between Morgan and him and all the staff, these people are treated with the dignity that the frail elderly deserve, and that we should be very proud that we are providing. So thank you, folks. Congratulations. Keep up the good work.
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you brought up about music, Morgan, you're 100% correct. In fact, it's even better. My wife's grandmother was like 106. They used to go to the nursing home in Wapaka, and they would sing Christmas carols, and there was a couple of people with Alzheimer's, and they couldn't remember yesterday, that's more what's going on. But the minute they started singing Christmas songs, these people started singing with them because the music brought back. And to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, they're starting to do more research on that to help these people come back. So I'm hoping, I don't know if you do, but I think you should get people to come in, especially during Christmas, and sing, which will bring these people back. But anyway, music is a very good thing for the Alzheimer's. Thank you.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you. A very quick question, Morgan. When do you think the new nurse call system will be installed and be working?
Mike, I don't know that I can give you a good timetable on that. I can tell you that we have started working with the engineer in terms of design for it, and then we would still need to, from there, develop the RFP, and then obviously start planning the logistics of the transition. I would hope within the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org.
I think Tom Widener and I can probably answer any questions that you have.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, can you elaborate on that falling apart now from that? Apparently, I thought it was pretty good a while back, and now what happened here?
It's still pretty good, but we recognize that when we added the engineering facility, we added additional parking area, and the trend on the number of snow removal incidents has been up. So we built additional snow removal monies into this budget. Outagamie has taken a different approach. They want UW Fox to add a fee to parking to cover the incremental costs. And it's just a philosophical difference. We believe one of the primary features of UW-Fox is that those individuals that can't afford to go away to a four-year campus or that are place-bound can get the best value for education by going to UW-Fox. So we were willing to add additional money to this budget to deal with the additional snow removal costs. Outagamie County may or may not do it. It's my hope that if we do it, that they'll join in, but if they do not join in, we will only pay as much as they match, and then the university will be forced to find other alternatives to cover those costs. But we're actually fighting over a very small amount of money.
Thank you.
So I have a question for you. For years, Outagamie County always paid all their bills first and then we paid last. So is that why we're coming first now? I mean, it's like, I don't understand. I'm missing
Yeah,
something.
I think actually we paid these bills and were reimbursed by them.
I understand, right. Right, but now it's the opposite, right? Or I don't know, something isn't right. I'm saying that for years, Outagamie County, well, no, you're UW-Fox. For years, Outagamie County went first to their board meeting for budgets.
Oh, yes.
Now they're coming to us to go first. I
Yeah,
was just curious what that's all
I'll be
about.
honest, I don't know where they are in their budget deliberations. And theirs are done a little different than ours. Their budget is pretty much a one meeting short affair. They don't go through all the department budgets in detail with their entire board, so they have a different process.
Okay.
But it could be they've already decided and I don't even know it.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me add a little bit to this. I'm not familiar with what happened years past, but right now, when the trustees at UW-Fox approve the payment of the bills, they come to Winnebago County to be paid.
Right.
Winnebago County then bills Outagamie for their half. We're talking about peanuts money here, but basically, Outagamie County essentially does not necessarily plan their money ahead. They pay the money as they go, so they'll come into the end of this year on the additional incidents that we had for snow removal, and they will actually take a beating in the next year, but they will pay. They have already made a commitment. Their financial group has already made a commitment. They'll pay all of the funds. We anticipate the same thing will happen in 2015. That we will that we will still approve at the trustee level, that we pay the bills, they will come here, we will pay our share, and then we will bill them. The agreement that we have on this is we will do that until Outagamie County does not pay their share. We're not anymore in what it says here, in which we say we will not pay our share if they don't agree to pay their share ahead of time. We have said that we will pay our share and then we'll worry about where they pay their share. Because we got to remember the whole purpose of this is to maintain the buildings of which we own half of. And we certainly want to maintain those buildings. Theoretically, if we did what it said on here, is we would, pardon me for a little bit of hyperbole here, is we could let the buildings fall down. If Outagamie County said we aren't going to pay our thing. We're not going to do that. I think Winnebago County has got a little bit more sand in itself to say that we will pay our share of it and we will worry about what Outagamie County does in the future. But right now, they are continuing to pay, even though they did not come ahead in 2014 and say we will pay the money ahead by going through the resolution policies as we do. They're just paying as they go.
So Tom, you're suggesting that if we have a heavy snow year, they'll just add additional funds to this budget when they encounter that. We're talking about adding additional funds up front because that's our best guess of what the actual expenses would be. So it's just a little difference in approach.
That's correct. I think that both of us will end up paying for the snow removal, which is half of that. And it's the incidents, which you mentioned before, and not the total amount of snow we have. It costs, it doesn't cost twice as much to take care of 2 inches as it does to 4 inches. I got it backwards, but no. So it's the number of incidents we have, so you can have less snow and still have a higher cost for snow removal.
Supervisor Haig.
Mr. Chairman, so I know I asked you last night and I spoke out of turn. I apologize about those boilers. Last night or was that this morning?
That was last night. That was this morning and I answered that.
Yeah, but I guess my question is, now that I'm hearing this information, has Outagamie County already set aside their portion of the money for those boilers?
Yes, they have.
They have, okay. In regards to the dialogue about the snow plowing and the fee for parking in the parking lot, what did that look like? Did Jim Egan, did he give you guys a figure as to what type of revenue might be able to be generated through a nominal parking fee?
We did not get into that because, basically speaking, that is not what our requirement is. Both Outagamie County and Winnebago County have said we will take care of the maintenance of the buildings. That does not include going out and asking UW Fox to come up with more funds. Outagamie County, if pardon the expression, one of their people has kind of a wild hair about trying to come up with funds by UW Fox as opposed to Outagamie County. So basically my position on that, and I think that Tom Snyder's is the same, is that we are not interested from Winnebago County of asking UW Fox to come up with additional funds. So there has been no, to answer your question, there has been no estimate of what we could get done.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about a wild hair, but I think that's more common sense than wild hair. And it's not necessarily maintenance. I mean, maintenance is what we did in resurfacing and extending that parking lot. I think snow removal is something entirely different. And it actually, shame on me, shocks me to hear that they are not paying to use that parking lot. I know that they pay at Menasha High School and Neenah High School, all the high schools in the area. It just surprises me that there is not even a very nominal fee to use the parking lot.
Actually, there is UW Fox does pay some money for additional parking, which is across the street at the bowling alley. So essentially, what we talk about is Outagamie, or is the UW Fox paying some additional funds for parking? The answer to that is yes, they are doing that right now. Snow removal, maintaining of the buildings is all part of the maintenance agreement that we have. So unless we want to change that agreement, then I think we do what we said we would do.
Supervisor Warnke.
Mark, is there any truth to the matter of there's a rumor going around that the technical colleges and the two-year universities are going to merge?
I wouldn't say that there's any plan for that to take place. There are discussions in some circles about whether there's duplication there, but I'm pretty familiar with both. I've served on the board of the technical college, and of course I've got the county's involvement of the two-year program. They're not a duplication at all. The technical college is focusing on two-year programs with training very specific to the needs of the business community. UW Fox Valley is focusing on associate degrees that people could then go to a four-year university to finish the four-year degree, with one notable exception. The investment we made in engineering, which really focuses on people that are already in the workforce that want to complete an engineering degree. Most of those classes are offered in the afternoon and evening, and that meets the needs of those people who, because they're already working, can't travel to a four-year campus to get an engineering degree. And remember, UW Oshkosh didn't have any engineering at the time. The majority of the graduates from that program, in my understanding, there's already been about 60 of them. They're all working in the Fox Valley, meeting the employer's needs. There was this terrible shortfall in the number of engineers available, and we're far enough north, it's very hard for us to recruit, engineers coming from universities in other parts of the country. So it's really served a business community need, as well as place-bound students who now can obtain a four-year Platteville degree right here in Winnebago County at relatively bargain costs.
But that's only at the engineering level. The technical colleges recognize, the UWO will recognize a lot of the classes that you take at technical colleges.
Well, yes, and they also recognize most of the classes at UW Fox. And in fact, if we didn't sponsor a two-year college, that would have a very adverse impact on UW Oshkosh, because you get a significant dropout rate of freshmen and sophomore that don't complete their education in 4 years. And so there would be smaller junior and senior class sizes, but for the number of kids coming from UW Fox Valley to complete their last 2 years at University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. So there's a big benefit to UW Oshkosh of having UW Fox Valley. And I'm told at the springboard meetings with people from the university that the students coming from UW Fox Valley perform quite well when they get to UW Oshkosh. So,
Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Smith.
Yeah, just to comment on it, the missions of the university system and the Wisconsin technical colleges are totally different. One is for immediate job training, that's the tech schools. The university system is for ongoing education. And although certain classes are, credits are transferred between the two institutions, there's no idea in the works of mixing them. University system is a state system. The tech school system is by district, 13 districts, 33 schools, and it's governed primarily by the counties.
and the only thing I would add to that for new board members is that a community cannot have a two-year college unless it has a municipal sponsor. So if Winnebago and Outagamie County didn't come together to sponsor this two-year campus, it wouldn't exist. And I think if you haven't been out there, for those of you that are newer, to see this facility, it's a wonderful facility and is doing a lot of good work. And I would really encourage anyone to go out there and see what they have there because of the two county boards. I think the next one is Parks.
Yep.
And Parks is on 454. Parks has 6 full-time and 2 part-time employees, the same as last year. Rob Way is in the back of the room to take any of your questions. And the summary of significant changes are on page 459 and 460.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not as good as my colleague, Mr. Rowe, is in terms of coming up with exact days or times anything was mentioned, but I do have in my hand the amendment for the Winnebago County General Code section relating to Sunnyview Expo rental fee schedule, which I think was discussed during our September meeting. And at the time, it was discovered that Sunnyview was running at a $150,000 deficit per year. I think you told me, Mr. Ray, that you had a $350,000 operations budget, if my notes are correct here, and revenue of $200,000. So that tells me there's a $150,000 deficit. Is that true?
Yeah, it operates at a deficit, and that's actually been an issue between me and Parks for some years, that I wanted them to gradually raise their fees so that we weren't providing such a subsidy. But they also point out that it's a service to the community to have a facility like that that can be rented out by people within the community. And
I also understand that when there's a deficit, it goes under the levy.
that's correct. So it ends up being broadly subsidized by the community. And that's one of the reasons why Rob and I have talked about this in the past, that I felt they've got to gradually get those fees up to where they're covering costs.
Now, how long have we had this deficit? How many years?
I think it's getting smaller, but I think it's been there all along.
I don't know. Okay, well, we've talked about a lot of things here this afternoon with regards to other areas and other departments, and I don't think it's acceptable to be running an annual deficit when other departments are being held liable for other things. So
Well-
I would like to see that deficit eliminated as soon as possible.
I do agree, but think about most of what Parks does. You know, you don't charge money for people to use a park. You operate that on tax levy. Most forms of recreation in a community only exist because of levy subsidy. I mean, you don't charge for tennis courts. You don't charge for the use of the parks. We do have fees on boat launches, but there's still county money invested in those things. So
You could charge for use of tennis courts. It's done in other counties.
you could, but the question is, what's the role of the county? And to the extent that you think the county has some role in recreation, especially in outdoor open spaces, that's automatically going to end up being a subsidy. But I would have to say that I do agree with you that the Expo Center should be able to cover its costs at some point.
What is the cost to rent the soccer fields?
I'll let Rob answer that because I don't know.
Yeah, there is no charge for the soccer fields. However, when the organizations such as OISC do run their tournament, they are charged for the cost of shelter rentals.
But there's no field use charges.
Correct.
Okay. Last year we approved a pickleball court. Have those been built?
They have.
How many are there?
3.
And we don't charge for use of those either?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I think if we have this annual deficit that we're running every year, we should think about other ways of collecting the revenue to pay that off. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure, as Mr. Fari pointed out in your portion of the budget about the iPads, that everybody makes sure they see the money in here, the $100,000 for for something regarding a dog park. I guess we're really not sure at this point, but my question. Yeah, I don't know if that's the $100,000 that I'm seeing in parentheses on decreased fund balance because that $100,000 is not coming from levy, it's coming from undesignated fund balance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess my question is, in regards to community park, is that the most northern county-operated park?
You'd have Oshkosh a little bit north of that, but that'd be about as far as the Parks Department extends up there.
So I'm just curious, I'm not sure if we don't have a county park for humans north of County Park in Oshkosh, I'm just not sure why it's a priority to establish a dog park on the north side of the county. So I know that there's going to be an amendment to take that out, even though it's coming from fund balance. I know that there were a majority of this board who proceeded in voting in favor of a North County dog park in concept. But I would just urge you to support that amendment as it comes out. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Olson, little information for you. Back about 8-10 years ago, the parks tried to get a user's fee for the soccer fields, and we were shot down like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we had kids in the back with signs, "Don't tax us kids." So, yes, we did try to get a user's fee or something to help the funding, but we got shot down, simple as that. But I just want to make you aware that the Parks Department has tried in the past to try to bring some money to help pay for it. Okay?
Supervisor Gabbard.
Okay, here goes. Number one, $100,000. Is that the line item that you have for land? Is that for the dog park that you have in your budget? 58000, the 100,000, is that where you've got it? Okay, then here goes my questions. We've talked about this dog park Supervisor Finch, you've talked about perhaps going and getting some funding, and you've talked about Gladfelter, and then you didn't talk about Gladfelter. So you've got this $100,000 in here for a dog park, and my question to you is, are you purchasing land? Do you have some land that you want to buy? Are you looking to the future? Do you have a site picked out? And what's going on with that? The other thing is, I'm back at the Expo Center. If we have something that's running in the deficit, and it has been for quite a while, we just browbeat the airport department that they need to look for more revenue. So I'm going to just turn the turnstiles on the Parks Department. Sorry, but here we go. You know you have a deficit at the Expo Center. It's a community service. We have an airport that we have pilots that pay rent for hangars out there for recreation of their airplanes. So my thought here is, let's get this deficit cleaned up at the Expo Center. I know that a lot of people rent the Expo Center. A lot of people rent everything at the park. I've been one of them. I think we have a great Parks Department. But when you have a deficit and you're telling one department, you need to go find revenue, or perhaps we're going to cut your budget. So let's get this park thing cleaned up. But I would like to ask Rob on the dog park, is that all we're going to spend on land, and how much land are we getting for $100,000 for the dog park? Because I'm not sure I'm 100% for this dog park if we're paying $100,000 for a hunk of land.
The 100,000 is seen as seed money. It's not necessarily going towards a land acquisition. It's intended to provide an option in a couple of different ways. If it were to be a land acquisition, it's there. It certainly is needed money for development. It would only cover for the fencing, perimeter fencing. It would not cover all that's needed for the parking lot or trail that would likely go in. It's also seen as a good faith funding for other possible grants that might be applied for, some of those being matching grants. So it's kind of serves a dual purpose. No, there is no property assigned to it necessarily, though.
So it's seed money? Seed money in a county budget for $100,000? That doesn't fly with me. I don't like that word seed money. So you have to convince me a little bit harder than that. I know about fencing. I know about what we're going to have to do for the dog park. But we started out that we thought we were going to get this good deal from Gladfelter. Then we started out on a second tune to the story that we're going to get donators. If we had donators that were going to donate and we could raise some money, this dog park would go through a lot easier. So I don't have anything against dogs. I don't have anything against cats, but don't call that seed money, because that upsets me. This is a budget, not a seed money thing. So that's my take on that. Thanks.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add a little bit or ask a question relating to the dog park. And we got pardon me for using the word Supervisor Gabbard. We have this seed money for the dog park for $100,000. Are we anticipating that the rest of the money that we require for the dog park will all come from donations?
Yes, I think I can answer that. There is a potential for both donated land and for donations. And with regard to the Gladfelter site, there's been discussion. There is a site that would be available for very little. However, I have been objecting to the county entering into the chain of title for that property because it was once a paper sludge landfill. Now it is quite possible that the DNR is going to give it a clearance and allow all the monitoring of the site to stop. But my instincts are that we would rather do a long-term lease than be in the chain of title for property that we aren't completely satisfied with what's underneath it. I can tell you, however, it's an old enough landfill that it was neither capped on the bottom nor capped on the top. And while that certainly means the groundwater, when it was done, was protected less than what we would do today, it also means that water could get into the site and may have long ago converted what once had been paper sludge to soil. So if the DNR in fact gives the site clearance and the monitoring can stop, that might change my feelings about it. But as long as they're requiring monitoring of the groundwater, I don't want to be in the chain of title. But I wouldn't be upset to lease use of the surface on a long-term lease. But then we would need fencing to go forward. But I think this money is in the parks budget without commitment to any single site, but to move the process forward. And it's largely inspired by an overwhelming vote of the board supporting the concept of a northern dog park in principle. And just a final humorous observation. I've been thanked for the dog park we have in County Park many, many times. And it's never been by a dog, it's always been by a person.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying there is that we'll spend, assuming that we spend the $100,000, that we won't be coming back to the board for additional funds, but we will use only donated funds. Is that correct?
I don't think there's a commitment to that. But in order for the process to start moving forward, we're asking the board to commit to have, and again, we're going to use the term you don't like, seed money, so that should, for instance, we move ahead with leasing the Gladfelter site, we would have enough money for fencing. Or should we be able to obtain a grant, that we would have the money to do the matching for the grant. Or, you know, the initial funding by the county may prove to be the lightning rod for gathering funds from other sources. But I've also discouraged the direct solicitation of funds for a dog park until we had some commitment by the board to go forward. And that's what this money is. And it's largely in the budget because of the vote that the county board took probably about a month ago.
Okay, I don't have a problem with $100,000. I do have a problem with the fact if we're saying we're going to spend $100,000 and we'll be back in 6 months and want another $100,000 and then be back in a year from that to get additional funds, because I think the whole idea was that we get $100,000 seed money, and that would get people to donate the money to continue the dog park. So I would have a problem with a commitment for $100,000 and an open end further on. I really would.
The board's giving no open-ended commitment for additional funds. The Parks Department would have to come back to the board if they were requesting additional county funds. But what I'm not doing, I'm not promising you that as opportunities develop, that the Parks Department will never come back to ask for additional funds, because it could be that if we find an alternative site and the donations are short of the cost of the land, it could be that to explore that possibility they would have to come back to the board, but the board would always have the ability to say no.
I guess one last point I'll make is that we come back with 6 months from now or a year from now, we will say, gee, we already spent $100,000. Why are we wasting the $100,000? Let's move on and spend another $50,000, That's the way it happens. So I think that we need to say that it's not in our plan, at least, to come back and ask for additional funds, because I guarantee you we will.
Your point's well taken, but they probably can't get the ball rolling unless there's some commitment by the board. And if the board was adamant that they didn't want to even risk starting the process, that leaves me very confused about the overwhelming vote by the board to approve it in principle.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you. Rob, about this expo deficit, we don't charge other departments when they use that facility, correct?
Correct.
So when the emergency government had this, he's going to have this event in the summer, and had next summer, and I think they had one last summer. Did you charge them anything?
No, we don't typically, well, we don't charge other departments, sheriff's departments, emergency government, I think even.
So estimate, can you estimate how much we are losing in revenue by not charging those?
Well, it's difficult to say that it would be a charge necessarily that's costing us any sort of overhead. The facility's there, and typically we are slotting them in at times that are less active in use. Certainly our personnel do supply services to them. So if that's what you mean by extra cost, I do have to admit it's nominal.
And I guess I also want to, Mr. Supervisor Olson brought up, why don't we charge for people who use the pickle cart and whatever? Okay, we can do that, but then I believe we're going to have to hire someone, another park ranger, to make sure that those fees are being enforced. So you're going to have to hire someone to work from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. from probably April to the end of November. Do you want to incur all those costs just for getting that $3 to $5 for that person to play pickleball or to practice to play softball or soccer? That's why one reason why I'm against those type of fees.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you. I want to just respond to Mr. Norton. The fees could be collected without hiring somebody very easily. You could buy them online. You could go to a central place and get them beforehand when you make the reservation. So I don't know if it would really add that much more cost. But it's a point well taken. Getting back to the dog park, what you just said, Mr. Harris, was that if we approve the $100,000 seed money, there may not be any additional cost involved. But then you also said you're willing to lease the land.
Yes, I mean, Gladfelter would probably.
So we are spending more money.
They would probably give us the facility for a bargain price, or let us lease it on a long-term basis for a bargain price. But those conversations are going all different directions. One of the things is that they had suggested that we could lease it for $1, but they would want us then to do the well monitoring because Gladfelter no longer has a presence in Wisconsin. Well, I don't know if I'm willing to do that, but I want to leave the Parks Department and the board in a position to start the process of investigating this, to do some bargaining. With the commitment of dollars from the county, it's quite probable that the supporters of a dog park could come up with a substantial amount of money as well. But this is just a way to further the process after the board indicated overwhelmingly that they approved it in concept, yeah.
I've been against this from the start, as you know. I don't think we need 2 dog parks. None of the other counties have 2 dog parks except Fond du Lac. But that one, the second one was donated at no cost to the county. We acquire the land. Isn't it then going to cost more money to do land improvements to get it ready to be a park?
The fencing is the largest cost.
But what about preparing the land? I mean, you're not going to let dogs run around on a landfill, are you?
Yeah, it's a closed landfill. It's been sealed for years.
Really? You're not going to spend anything on any site improvement? You wouldn't spend anything on any site improvement?
Probably be mostly open, but I think if there were donors or, if there's other funds available from advertising or donors, but I think you're all approaching this as if there's a set plan already on what we're going to do. There's not.
But there's $100,000 in the budget in case.
Yes, that's the money that would allow the process to start and would allow us then to solicit support from other sources and would allow us the possibility of moving ahead with Gladfelter if either the land is cleared and the monitoring stops, or if Gladfelter is willing to lease it for us and keep us out of the chain of title of ownership.
Well, the bottom line here with my comment is that it's not going to just cost $100,000. It's going to cost more. We all know that. going back to my colleague's comment here, we'll approve the money, and 6 months later, we need money for site improvement, we need money for this, we need money for that. It's not just going to be $100,000.
Well, I guess the question is, what do we spend on putting in the existing dog park?
Well, that was on property out at the community parks. It was minimal. It was fencing costs, the parking lot was already there.
So what do you think we invested in that dog park in terms of any fixtures, grounds, fencing?
Approximately 20,000.
Are we going to have personnel up there to let people in and out?
I think we use someone to open and close the dog park, but I don't think it's manned during operation.
Well, that's going further than what it all depends on the property that we get and how we manage it. So getting into the specifics of personnel and how we're administering it, it's probably going too far at this point.
Well, it might be going too far, but again, we're not talking about what the total cost of this thing is. I mean, now we may or may not have a person that has to work this thing, so.
It's quite possible that if you approve this money, it still might not move ahead. But I can guarantee you that if you don't approve the money, it's not going to move ahead. But this is money that gives them the opportunity to explore it while the county's demonstrating some commitment to the concept. And this is nothing new. This was talked about the first year I was elected as well.
All right, thank you. I just think we have other urgent things in the county to dedicate that money towards. Thank you.
We spent more time on a dog park than we did on a $160 million human services budget. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand Supervisor Gabbert's problem with the word seed money. I suggest we change it to the more democratic term, potential investment capital.
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to go into recess until October 29th, 8:30 a.m. Actually, I move to adjourn.
Then moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll vote by our little iPad. If we adjourn, I'll call on you in the morning right away. Oh, okay. 8:30. It's not debatable.
No. Tomorrow when we come back, is the first one going to be the first one? Is he going to have to come back?
He will be your question will come up, yes. Well, we have to wait a minute. No, you aren't adjourned. We have to wait till Sue comes back so that she can operate her machine. Put it on the machine.
Just to adjourn? They can't agree on anything.
Could you clear my voting, because I don't know what the vote. Yeah, it was on voting, but I was voting.
We can do it manually, right?
I'm voting no.
Well, I think if we would try hitting a no.
Also, Weiderschmidt is absent.
Oh, okay. Tom, I can change yours.
Kenny Robles
Okay.
after. Kenny had to leave, didn't he? We are adjourned until 8:30 tomorrow morning. Right? We're adjourned until 8:30 tomorrow morning.
You want me to send you an email about Toronto? I won't be able to come out. You want me to send you an email?
No, I remember.
Okay.
It wouldn't hurt to send me an email, then you got a record of it.
All right, I will.
Ari that if old people with dementia can work on bands, he probably can. But I don't think that modified it.
You have. Pardon?
My wife was having surgery. Can I be excused?
Yes.